Mercedes have lost faith in their car concept for 2023, with them now resigned to the fact that their zero pods will no longer be the magic bullet they hoped would bring them back to the front of the grid for this season. And as Toto has stated in numerous post-race and qualifying interviews throughout this weekend, they're going to have to make radical changes to their car concept.
On everybody else, and that is the benchmark. But we need to put one step after the other to just come back, and we can do that.
Sorry, you can
We can, absolutely, we can. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do then? What's the plan? Do you wait for the Imola update or race 6 or whenever it's coming, and then see what happens then?
No, I think it needs to be much more radical in the steps than just hope for a 3 times upgrade.
So, after these comments, what exactly are the Mercedes team going to have to do to make their car competitive for this season? And what are these so-called radical changes that are going to have to be made? Well, in this video, we're going to be discussing that very topic. And there are a few key factors at play here which will help Mercedes in understanding just where it is in their car that they have to make these changes. But before we do, if you're new around here and are enjoying the content so far in this video, consider subscribing to the channel. And for those of you who aren't aware, there's going to be a competition run throughout the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend where 3 subscribers will win teamwear from their favourite Formula 1 team. So be on the lookout for that as well. Right, let's jump on with what Mercedes need to do to make this car competitive. Mercedes has just been through a very disappointing Bahrain Grand Prix weekend, with them being off the pace in both qualifying and the race, with the race pace of the W14 being even worse than its qualifying pace, with the showing of Fernando Alonso taking Lewis Hamilton with ease in one of the slowest and most difficult parts of the track to overtake in. With the W14, they'd hoped that they would have cured all the ailments that the W13, its predecessor, had experienced, and with that would have come the realization of the true understanding of their zero pods concept. But this hasn't been the case, and in fact, even with everything now ironed out and all the weaknesses taken off of this W14, they still find themselves over a second a lap slower than that of the Red Bulls when it comes to a race situation, which is a huge margin in terms of lap time to be given up to them. And if we're being totally honest, they're not going to claw that back over the remainder of this season. Now, this is the reason why they've come to the realization that this zero pods concept that they've now been pushing for 2 years is not going to bring them back into play with the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, and even now Aston Martin, who have leapfrogged them in the development race over the winter. So where exactly and what are the areas in which Mercedes find themselves lagging behind the likes of Red Bull and Aston Martin? Well, number one, of course, is tyre degradation and just the natural preservation they have over their tyres. This is something we saw throughout the race, where they were eating up the tyres a lot quicker than the likes of Red Bull and Aston Martin, and this enabled Alonso to hunt Lewis Hamilton down throughout, a couple of stints at the beginning of the race, even though Alonso was quite a way behind him. The natural longevity that the Aston Martin AMR 23 has over its tyres and over the Mercedes W14 allowed him to claw back a deficit of over, I believe, 7 seconds to then go and overtake and finish around 20 seconds ahead of Lewis. So that's one major area in which they are losing out on. A second area is that of traction. This was something that was quite evident through the GPS data in both qualifying and race trim. As you can see, the Aston Martin AMR 23 is the superior machine against the likes of the Mercedes and Red Bull and Ferrari. So this is another area in which they have to find solutions in. And then finally, just general overall downforce. They're just lacking it. It's something that they hoped would be remedied with everything else that the W14's zero pod concept would bring about change and in a positive way, but it's just not been the case. This has left the drivers having an imbalance in every section of a corner. So the corner entry, mid-corner and corner exit. It's a different balance as they go through each corner. And of course with that brings about the extra conundrum of sliding around, overheating the tyres, and this of course adds to the issue of their tyre wear management that they have currently. It's almost as if they have gone back to the old days of the early years in Mercedes' team where they had tyre issues, particularly with the W02 and W03, where they would just eat the tyres up throughout a race distance. So having gathered all the GPS data and now knowing where their deficits and weaknesses are to their competition, how are Mercedes going to find out when it comes to their particular W14 on their car, where is it that they need to make changes to in order to bring more competitiveness to it? Well, a lot lies in the Aston Martin AMR 23, and this is where it gets really interesting. So number one, the entire back end of the AMR 23 and W14 are identical because of course Aston Martin buy their entire rear end from Mercedes, so that allows Mercedes to rule out having to change anything at the rear of their W14. So this leaves suspension geometry at the front obviously of the car, as well as the side pod solution that they are currently carrying. And this is where I believe the main issues lie with where Mercedes find themselves. They're going to have to make changes to the concept of the W14, and in particular I'm talking about the zero pod concept that they've gone with for the last 2 seasons. I think they need to go the route of the RB19 and the AMR 23. And I think this is where Mercedes are now starting to get an understanding of where it is they exactly need to make these changes. And I think we're going to see some complete radical solutions around their side pod treatment, as alluded to by Toto Wolff as well earlier in his qualifying interview from this video. But here's a second clip, one after the race, where he speaks even more on that particular point.
Engine as well, but as you say, it's your job to fight them and to catch them. And well, what's your thinking? What's your plan now, concept or otherwise?
I think it's just radical. They, as I said, they deserve to be where they are because they did a fantastic job. The good news for us is there is a lot of Mercedes in there, so we know exactly where to pinpoint it, and that will be helpful in the recovery.
So there you have it. That's where I think Mercedes needs to focus the rest of their resources and budget allocation for this season. Hopefully this brings them a lot closer to the front, but I would doubt that it brings them into World Championship contention because their car is not based around such a solution. So you're naturally going to have the issue Aston Martin had last year when they changed to the Red Bull concept. And it wasn't until this year where they managed to completely redesign the internals of their car to accommodate for that side pod solution. Right guys, that is the video. I hope you've all enjoyed it and it's been informative to you. If you have, leave a like, comment anything you have down below, and I will catch you all in another Formula 1 video.